Hey guys, it's Thomas here with TechnoVision and welcome back to our fabric modding tutorial series for 1.16. Now in this episode, we're going to be adding a custom basic item to the game with its own texture and its own name. So to do that, you want to come over to your main package here. You want to right click, create a new package, and we're going to name this registry. Now this registry package over time is going to fill up with classes that will register the various objects that we're going to add to the game. But for right now, we're just focusing on items. So you want to create a new class inside of this registry package named mod items. And this mod items class is going to slowly fill up with the items that you add to the game. So in order to create an item in Fabric, inside of your mod items class, you want to create a new public static final item, and make sure you import item real quick, import class. And you want to name this item essentially the name of your object in all capitals. So in my case, I'm going to be adding a Ruby to the game, so I would put Ruby. If your item has multiple spaces in its name, you would use an underscore. So if you were, for example, making like a stained glass object, you would put stained underscore glass, just like that. For me, I'm going to put Ruby. And this is going to equal a new item. And this is going to pass in just some settings. So to pass in some settings, you want a new item dot settings dot, and you can see that there's a few settings we can really play around with, but really all we care about right now is the group. So you want to set the group, and this is going to determine the creative tab that this item falls under when you are in creative mode. So to set a tab, you want to do item group dot, and then you can choose a creative tab from this list. In my case, I'm going to choose materials because Ruby is a material similar to like a diamond or gold. So I'm going to be choosing that one, but you can choose whatever you want. And this will set the group for your creative menu. Now you can add additional settings if you would like, as you can see here, but I will be covering most of these in the advanced items tutorial later on in this series. So really all you need to worry about right now is setting the item group for your creative tab. So now that we have our item actually created, we need to register it to the game. So to do this, I'm going to make a method for this. So I'm going to do public static void, and then we're going to call this register items. Now this method is just going to register our items. So to do that, we want to get the registry and then use the static.register method. And this is going to pass in three things. First, the registry. So you want to do registry dots, and this will determine what type of registry, what type of deferred registry you are adding this item to. In our case, it's an item, so you want to select item, add a comma, and then the second parameter is going to be an identifier. So we want to create a new identifier, and this is going to take in our mod ID and then the name of our item. So to get your mod ID, you want to get your main class. So in my case, tutorial dot, and then you should have your mod ID. Again, we created that static final string here in our main class in the last episode. And then of course you also want to pass in the name of your actual object. So this name should be exactly what you have here, just all lowercase. So in my case, Ruby. And you can include those underscores again if you're using spaces. So you could do like stained underscore glass here. But again, I'm going to put Ruby for mine. And then the last parameter you want to add for our register method is the actual item. So you can just pass in Ruby. And again, that is this item right here. You can just copy and paste it down into here and add a semicolon. So yeah, there we go. Our item is now registered, or at least it will be once we add this to the main class. And our item should be in the game. It won't have a texture yet or a name, but we'll fix that in a second. So what you want to do to make sure that this method gets called is come to your main class, and in your onInitialize method here that we override, you want to grab your mod items class and then just dot register items. That way onInitialize our mod actually registers our items to the game. So now that we have our item in the game, what you want to do is actually add a texture to it. So to add a texture, we need to come over to our resources folder here and go to assets, and you should already have a folder here that is named your mod ID. So again, your mod ID is what we set right here. And so if you don't have that, you can create that right now, but open that up and you're going to create some new packages in here. So first you want to create a directory named models. Then you want to also create another directory in your mod ID package here named textures. So you should have in your tutorial, or whatever the name of your mod ID package is, a models folder and a textures folder. Now inside of models, we want to right click, create a new directory, and you want to name this item, just singular. And then in textures, you want to right click, create a new directory, and this should be named items, plural. So again, you should have a models folder with an item inside of it, or an items package inside of it, and then a textures folder with an items package inside of it. So now that that's done, we can actually create our model. So in order to assign a texture to our custom item, we need a JSON file that essentially specifies what texture is going to be used for our object. So we can do that by inside of models item, we want to right click, create a new file here, and you want to name this file the same name as your object, so whatever you put right here for your path. So in my case, Ruby, and then .json. Hit enter and add a repository. So this is going to be empty, of course, but to make this easy for you guys, I did actually throw together a paste bin that you can get in the description right now. It should be linked down below, and you can just copy this paste bin. This will have all of the JSON code for you, and you can just paste it in. And this is a model JSON. So just to run through this really quickly, it's determining what the model looks like. Here, we're saying that this is an item generated, so basically just like a regular item in Minecraft. And then we're setting the texture to a single layer, which is going to be specified here. This is basically what the texture is pulling from. So you want to replace mod ID with your mod ID. And again, mod ID is what we set right here. So tutorial for me. And then you want to change the item name to what you put in mod items for the name of your Ruby. So this right here, just copy and we can paste in. So again, you want your mod ID, items, / and then the name of your object, your item that you are creating. And you're gonna have to do this for every single item that you create, by the way, just so you know. Now we actually need to add this texture that we're specifying to our packages. So go to your desktop, and I will leave a link in the description to a really great tutorial on how to make your own textures for Minecraft if you don't know already, but you can open up something free or simple like GIMP or Paint.net, or even if you have Photoshop, that'll work great as well. And you can create your texture. You wanna make sure that your texture is 16 by 16 width and height, in pixels. It can also be increments of 16, so like 32 by 32, but I would recommend just starting with 16 by 16 if it's your first item. And yeah, so once you've done that, you want to name your item, the exact name that you have set for your item here. So in my case, Ruby. And again, if this was like a stained glass thing with a space in between, you would do stained_glass, like that with an underscore. So mine is gonna be Ruby. And you want to drag this into IntelliJ and just drag it into your items folder instead of textures. And we can refactor, add a repository. And as you can see here in our textures folder instead of items, we now have our ruby.png. So just to run through this one more time, our ruby.json is essentially a JSON file that is directing the fabric loader, or the game rather, to say, hey, we're making an item, it's item generated, and the texture here is going to be set to this package location, which happens to be right here. So yeah, everything should be working great. Now, one last thing we need to do is actually add a name to our item. So to do that, what you want to do, let's close up these packages here. You want to create a new package in your mod ID package, so tutorial for me. Create a new directory, and again, this is in resources assets, and you want to name this lang. And this is going to hold your language files. So for this case, I'm going to use English, but obviously you could use your language if you wanted to. So I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this en_us.json. And you can add a repository. Now this JSON file will hold like the language essentially for your items. So you want to add some curly braces here, and you can keep adding entries over time, but a simple entry would be just some parentheses, and then you would want item dot your mod ID. So in my case, tutorial dot, and then the name of your item. And again, that name is right here. So Ruby, and then you want a colon, and then another set of quotation marks, and this, what you put inside of these quotation marks will be what shows up in the game as the name of your object. So you could put spaces here, you could put like Ruby, shiny object, really whatever you want. So I'm gonna put Ruby just so it's simple. But yeah, every time you wanna add a new item into your lang, just add a comma and add a new entry. And the last entry should not have a comma, of course. So yeah, there you go. And now if we actually run the game, it should actually work. So come up to that green triangle here, click it, and I will see you in the game to test this out. Alright, so we're inside of the game now, and if you open up your creative inventory and you go to the search items tab and you scroll all the way down, you should see your custom item right there, and you can see that it does have our custom name we set, Ruby, and it also has our texture. And if we throw it on the ground, it is working great, just like a regular item. So yeah, everything is working perfectly. Now, one thing you should check is that the item group that you set is correct. So if you remember, we set our creative tab or item group to materials, but Mojang actually combined materials and miscellaneous into one tab, so that's why it says miscellaneous here. But if we check the miscellaneous tab, we can see that our item is in there and it's working great. So that's all perfect. And one more thing I want to show you is that if you don't want to use the creative menu to get your item, you can always do /give @p for the player, and then your mod ID, so tutorial, : and then the name of your object, so Ruby. And that will give you the object if you don't want to interact with the creative menu. Alright, so that's going to do it for this tutorial. Thanks guys so much for watching. I hope you learned a lot about items. Now, one thing I want to mention really quickly before we end the video is that if you go in the description, you will notice that I have a GitHub and a Discord link. The GitHub will take you to all of the source code for these videos, so you can check out everything that I did and copy it if you would like. And then the Discord is a help and support channel, as well as a really active community of around 1,500 modders and developers just like you, and you can interact with them and get some help. So definitely check out those links if you would like, and I will see you in the next episode.